Hey comrades, welcome back to the channel. I'm the Obnoxious Anarchist. In today's video, I want to talk about identity politics, the development of self, and just how shitty right-wing politics are. So, in this video, I want to thoroughly define identity politics by looking at definitions, history of usage, and I'll also consult some peer-reviewed articles. Then I want to give examples of what left-wing identity politics are and what right-wing identity politics are. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about what the term identity politics has in common with other right-wing buzz terms like political correctness or cancel culture. But first, let's see what our conservative talking heads have to say about identity politics.
The following may be offensive to a select few, so we pause for this trigger warning.
Tonight's topic, identity.
Instead of being proud of their own individual identity, they've chosen group identity, which then creates factions that will then war upon themselves. They will, and it'll happen on the left, but on the right, because we don't care anymore. We don't care if you think we're racist. So it's just an aspect of identity politics.
That's where we got the transformation into identity politics, which is just the Marxist oppressor-oppressed doctrine under a new guise. And I think it's really tremendously reprehensible.
In this age of identity obsession, there are 3 easy steps. Self-identify, establish victimhood, demand sensitivity.
Where do you think social justice, warriorism, and identity politics stands after last night?
I didn't make it about identity politics.
The end. I think that you're right, Tucker. It's the end of identity.
It could not be more timely. We are watching identity politics completely destroy the country.
It's identity politics, which prefers disunity and differences over mutual understanding.
Country is in danger, and it's being placed in danger by identity politics. Both.
Identity politics, I think, is just a dead end, just on its face.
Owen was blown away by his passion, his commitment to educating young people, and his desire to move past identity politics.
When the revolution comes, you can bloody well be sure that your head's going to be first on the chopping block.
Identifying with the world outside yourself is a very important part in the development of self. What you choose to identify as, or indeed what others choose to identify you as, will influence your decision-making and therefore the future situations you'll find yourself in, and the communities that you'll be a part of. It will literally become the material manifestation of your psyche. How anyone can think identity wasn't important in politics is sad to me. But that's besides the point. The right often characterizes identity politics as angry university students shouting down the innocent victim who only wants their speech to be respected in the university. After all, isn't the function of a university to be a safe space for learning and sharing ideas? And the answer to that question is of course yes. Universities are safe spaces of free speech that promote the production and reproduction of knowledge. But free speech absolutum is not and never has been accepted. As a society, we don't tolerate hate speech. And we don't tolerate hate speech on campuses because campuses are safe spaces for learning and sharing and creating knowledge. So that means it needs to be a safe space for everyone. All races, all ethnicities, able or differently abled bodies, all sexual orientations, all people. We rightfully have zero tolerance for hate speech on university campuses, and I don't think you'll find very many people who disagree with that. That's what we've learned from the successes of various civil rights initiatives around the world, and that's the trajectory that we should keep for the future of our universities, whatever form they take in the future. Now, I do have my critiques of academia, and they are critiques that run deep. The most important one being, of course, an anti-capitalist critique of universities and the commodification of knowledge. But that's material for another video. Here, I want to focus on identity politics. Alright comrades, let's get started with some definitions. Wikipedia defines identity politics as a term that describes a political approach wherein people of a particular religion, race, social background, class, or other identifying factor form exclusive socio-political alliances, moving away from broad-based coalitional politics to support and follow political movements that share a particular identifying quality with them. Its aim is to support and center the concerns, agendas, and projects of particular groups in accord with specific social and political changes. So here, identity politics is being defined as an alternative way of doing politics that's centered on other identifying factors besides traditional party politics. And its purpose is to center the periphery and to remain flexible in times of social and political change. Let's continue. Lexical Dictionary defines identity politics as A tendency for people of a particular religion, race, social background, etc. to form exclusive political alliances, moving away from traditional broad-based party politics. And this makes sense. I can give you a quick example using class analysis. If people of the same socio-economic background united based on those similar class interests, that would be much more effective than trying to agitate for your interests within an established political party alongside people who definitely don't have your interests in mind. And that's just one example of identity politics, of course. Class identity politics are generally left-wing identity politics, but fascists play the class identity politics as well, so it's important to know how your political opposites use identity politics. So, and I paraphrase from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, identity politics describes the political activity and theorizing of groups in society who have shared experiences of injustice. So as we've seen in the previous definitions, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy also says that identity politics is a way of doing politics that transcends the current political party system. And its main goal is to center the periphery and give power to groups who are vulnerable or even persecuted. It makes sense that the status quo wants us to organize using the traditional two-party model of representative democracy. It means that poor people won't realize that if they organize together on their class identity, they would work towards their interests a lot faster than hopelessly expecting bourgeois political parties to work in your interests as a worker. Do you really think that voting for the same parties that billionaires do will somehow change your life in any kind of meaningful way? Rich people already know this. They work together to stay rich. They work together for their interests through these bourgeois political parties. And in reality, these party systems are really just rich people working together to keep their power and identity. And for them to keep it, you need to stay poor. If this is all still confusing for you, don't worry. Now we're going to look at a history of usage of the term identity politics, and I'll try to flesh out a clearer definition. As described in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, identity politics was born in the context of the glorious uprisings of the second half of the 20th century, feminism, black and indigenous liberation, and LGBTQIA+ liberation. Identity politics as a mode of organizing is intimately connected to the idea that some social groups are oppressed, and rather than accepting the negative scripts offered by a dominant culture about one's own inferiority, one transforms one's own sense of self and community. And I don't know about you, but that's some powerful shit to me. The term's origins were in the Combahee River Collective Statement, which was a written statement made by a collective of black feminists in 1977. So I'll just go ahead and quote from that statement directly, of which you can find the link in the description below. The most general statement of our politics at the present time would be that we are actively committed to struggling against racial, sexual, heterosexual, and class oppression, and see as our particular task the development of integrated analysis and practice based upon the fact that major systems of oppression are interlocking. Now, I highly recommend this statement. It's an essential read in my opinion, and I'd like to dedicate an entire video to it someday. But for the purposes of this video, I'll just wrap this part up by saying that identity politics were born out of this left-wing body of politics. Class, race, sexual, and gender liberation are left-wing identity politics. As the statement says, we are socialists because we believe that work must be organized for the collective benefit of those who do the work and create the products, and not for the profit of the bosses. So, there's no denying that the term identity politics came from an explicitly leftist sphere. So what exactly do I mean when I say right-wing identity politics? Up till now, we've seen that identity politics is intimately connected to uplifting the vulnerable and the oppressed, and we all know that the right wing doesn't give a fuck about the vulnerable or oppressed. But that's where this all gets interesting. The right primarily plays white identity politics, which is an oxymoron of sorts, since we do live in a white supremacist culture. If you pay any attention to far-right rhetoric, you will see a lot of this white victim narrative, specifically in the whole demographic replacement anxiety realm.
The result is this: everybody gets a safe space except white men. They are hated and despised. What is this about exactly?
In a 2000 article titled "The Victim Ideology of White Supremacists and White Separatists in the United States," Mitch Berbrier explains how the social and theoretical role of the white victim narrative is to function as a recruitment tool. In this article, he breaks down these victim claims into 5 themes. First, white supremacists contend that whites are the real victims of racial discrimination. Second, they say their rights are being abrogated. In other words, they're saying that whites are losing their rights. Third, white supremacists claim that they're stigmatized if they express pride. And I just want to make a quick comment here. Black and brown power is not the same as white power. Black and brown power is based on black and brown people finding power under white supremacy. White power just signifies the continuation of white supremacy. Fourth, they claim that they're being psychologically damaged through the loss of self-esteem. And lastly, white supremacists claim victimhood by suggesting that the white race is ultimately facing a genocide. I couldn't find a free version of this article, but I put the link in the description below in case anyone wants to check it out with their university credentials. I also linked an Atlantic article that summarized Berbrier's work. So as much as they bash identity politics, the right just practices a perverted version of it. One that makes the dominant culture seem like the victim. I guess it's true that whenever you hide something right in front of someone's face, it's only harder for them to see it. But it doesn't end there. Capitalists will generally do this when their power is being challenged concretely. They believe that they are indeed the victim, even though they are the exploiter. And here I'm talking about landlords, the police, and other major stakeholders in this patriarchal white supremacist capitalist hellscape. With all that being said, check out my video on how capitalism gaslights the working poor. Just like they did with political correctness and cancel culture, the right created a boogeyman in identity politics. They construct these boogeymen and then hide behind them waiting to pounce. It's just a Trojan horse. Arguably, all politics is motivated by identity. The thing is, the dominator culture would rather you identify with a party that wants you dead than for you to identify with your immediate community. Alright comrades, in conclusion, we've looked at what identity politics means and how the term was coined. We looked at how the right uses a perverted version of identity politics in the white victim narrative and in bourgeois political parties. And finally, we addressed how identity politics is used as a straw man by the right. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Subscribe below, it helps the channel out a lot. Until next time, solidarity comrades.